This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everybody. Still. Okay. Is it okay? All entered? All of you joined the meeting? Seer is there? Pavan. Pavan is there?
Yes, ma'am.
Pavan, 150 members వచ్చారా ఇంకా రాలేదా?
100 వచ్చేసారు మ్యామ్.
100 వచ్చారా? మర్చిపోక స్క్రీన్ షాట్ తీసుకోవా అటెండెన్స్?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I will start the class. So they will join. So I think all of you know about the nephrotic syndrome. This is a very, very important topic for you for both theory, practical, and also day-to-day life. Because whenever any child with nephrotic syndrome is there, if any doctor not diagnosed properly, not treated, then the child may go for complications. Those complications can lead to death also, and also other complications like growth retardation and all those things. For that purpose, all of you should learn after the nephrotic syndrome. The main learning objectives of this class are, at the end of this class, all of you should know what is the definition of nephrotic syndrome, what is the pathophysiology in nephrotic syndrome, how will you classify the etiology of nephrotic syndrome, and you should know the clinical features of nephrotic syndrome, and you should differentiate the nephrotic syndrome clinically from acute glomerulonephritis, and also you should able to plan investigations for our child with nephrotic syndrome, and you should plan the treatment and also should plan the follow-up of a typical nephrotic syndrome, that is minimal change nephrotic syndrome or steroid sensitive nephrotic syndrome, and you should discuss the complications of nephrotic syndrome. Okay, so what is the definition of nephrotic syndrome? This is mainly renal glomerular disorder characterized by massive proteinuria, otherwise called as heavy proteinuria or nephrotic range proteinuria, hypoalbuminemia and hypocholesterolemia, and with or without edema. So TRIDE is mainly massive proteinuria, hypoalbuminemia, hypercholesterolemia with or without edema. So what is massive proteinuria or heavy proteinuria or nephrotic range proteinuria? Anybody can tell?
More than 3 grams of albumin in urine.
Okay. We can, somebody started. Just mention your name and answer. Who is answering?
Maunika,
what is okay. Be loud. Maunika, na?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you can answer. Try. Because yes.
24-hour urinary proteins more than 3 grams of albumin or 300 grams of protein, ma'am.
Sure? Okay. Anybody? Anybody? I think Pavan, you can also answer. I discussed this case with your batch also. Pavan and your batchmates. Tapaswi. Okay, otherwise I will tell. Others also might know. So what you told, that is 3 grams is for adults, because pediatric range from 1 year to 20 years or less than 1 year also. So we can't take it as a gross 3 grams per 24 hours. So we have to talk in meters per body surface area or per kg. So 24 hours urine protein more than 1 gram per square meter per day, or proteinuria of more than 40 milligrams per square meter per hour. So anything you can answer. So you should remember it will be per square meter per hour or per square meter per day. So 24 hours urine protein more than 1 gram per square meter per day, or proteinuria of more than 40 milligrams per square meter body surface area per hour. So any value 40 mg per square meter per hour or 1 gram per square meter per day, we will take it as massive proteinuria or nephrotic range proteinuria or heavy proteinuria. If anybody asks what is nephrotic range proteinuria, also you have to answer this thing. Or otherwise heavy proteinuria means also you have to tell this answer only, massive proteinuria. Any words are same. And what is albuminemia. Whenever this urine protein is lost in the urine, this will leads to decreased serum albumin levels. That is called as hypoalbuminemia. When will you, for nephrotic range, hypoalbuminemia means serum albumin below 2.5 grams per deciliter. And hypercholesterolemia means serum cholesterol levels more than 200 mg per deciliter. So all of you should remember these values, because for theory question and also orals, if you get the case of acute glomerulonephritis or nephrotic syndrome, they will ask these questions. How will you differentiate between nephrotic syndrome? What is the meaning of nephrotic range of proteinuria or hypoalbuminemia, hypercholesterolemia? These values you have to remember. And coming to the incidence of nephrotic syndrome in pediatric case group, this is 2.7 cases per 1 lakh children per year. Coming to the etiology mainly, this may be primary or secondary. Primary means idiopathic nephrotic syndrome. Primary is idiopathic nephrotic syndrome. Most common is the minimal change nephrotic syndrome. 80% of the idiopathic nephrotic syndrome is 80% is minimal change nephrotic syndrome. I think all of you know from the pathology, idiopathic means no obvious cause we identify, then we call as idiopathic. So primary nephrotic syndrome, this is very common in pediatric cases, minimal change nephrotic syndrome. And 80% of the cases is minimal change nephrotic with the pathological diagnosis, not clinically. Don't confuse between a pathological diagnosis and clinical diagnosis. Pathological diagnosis is minimal change nephrotic syndrome. But whenever you are presenting the case, that is a clinical diagnosis, there we have to mention as steroid sensitive nephrotic syndrome. Most of the minimal change nephrotic syndromes are response to the steroids. That's why we call it steroid sensitive nephrotic syndrome. Minimal change nephrotic syndrome is the pathological diagnosis under microscopy. There is no much changes in the glomerular basement membrane. That's why we call it minimal change nephrotic syndrome. Okay. And age usually under 7 years of age. Most common age, commonly 50% of the cases 7 to 14 years is the most commonly affected age in case of idiopathic nephrotic syndrome in the primary etiology. Secondary etiology, underlying connective tissue disorders like SLE, that is systemic lupus erythematosus, HSP, that is Enoch-Swannian purpura, or maybe some associated with some infections like hepatitis B and hepatitis C infections, malarial infection, especially Plasmodium falciparum, is the cause for nephrotic syndrome in case of secondary. So you should know primary and secondary. Primary is idiopathic nephrotic syndrome. Secondary is due to connective tissue disorders or underlying infections like hepatitis B, C, and malaria. And coming to the primaries, 80% I told you minimal change nephrotic syndrome. Remaining 20% may be focal segmental glomerular sclerosis, membranoproliferative glomerulonephritis, and membranous glomerulonephritis. Usually they will go for the relapses, frequent relapses, and the steroid dependency. And one entity is a congenital nephrotic syndrome, very rare. Usually it's common in less than 3 months of age. And secondary causes also may be due to drugs. Any drug which can cause nephrotic, anybody can answer from pathology. If you remember, which drugs will cause? In general medicine also will get this nephrotic syndrome. Penicillamines, D-penicillamine. Where do you use penicillamine? Penicillamine for treatment of which condition? Penicillamine, not penicillins are different. Penicillin is a antibiotic. Penicillamines not antibiotic. Wilson's disease. Okay. And malignancies, Hodgkin's lymphoma. Okay. Malignancies, Hodgkin's lymphoma, paraneoplastic syndrome. Some paraneoplastic syndromes can produce nephrotic syndrome, especially Hodgkin's lymphoma. And bee stings also can produce anaphylactic reaction and mimicry. So these are the secondary causes. Next, coming to pathophysiology. So main pathophysiology is also mainly the basement membrane involvement. So here you can see each nephron, there will be glomerulus. In the glomerulus, this is the Bowman's capsule, afferent arterioles and efferent. These capillaries, renal capillaries. So this is the basement membrane. This basement membrane microscopic tube. Microscopically, there will be food processes. This is urinary and this is the capillary and the capillary lumen. This is the urinary space. This is the glomerulus basement membrane, glomerular basement membrane. So this is the normal structure. So usually what happens, this normal glomerular basement membrane is negatively charged. So proteins are also negatively charged. So when negative usually repellent. So they won't allow the albumins to be passed, albumins or other proteins to pass into the urine and excreted normally. But in case of nephrotic syndrome, what happens? This negativity will be changed. So then proteins will allowed to be excreted in urine depending upon the proteins molecular weight, which type of proteins are excreted. If the molecular weight of the proteins are more than 70,000 kilodaltons, proteins are also excreted, that is heavy proteinuria. Non-selective proteinuria we call it. Only less than 70,000 kilodaltons proteins, molecular weight proteins only excreted in the urine, that is albumin and others. Then we call it selective proteinuria. Okay, got it? What is selective proteinuria? What is non-selective proteinuria? Sometimes if you are answering well, they will ask. Okay. So selective proteinuria means only proteins which molecular weight of less than 70,000 kilodaltons only excreted. That is called as selective proteinuria. Both molecular weight of less than 70,000 and more than 70,000 kilodaltons molecular weight proteins also excreted. That is called as non-selective proteinuria. So in case of minimal change nephrotic syndrome, usually that's a selective proteinuria. Albuminuria is more commonly excreted. So in case of nephrotic syndrome, glomerular basement membrane loses its negative charges. This leads to inability to repulse the small negative charged proteins like albumin. This leads to increased loss of albumin in the urine, in spite of there is no mechanical damage to the membrane in minimal change nephrotic syndrome. Okay. So one more underlying pathogenesis is the immunological change. So damage in immunological change, immunological integrity, mainly due to infections like malaria or hepatitis B and hepatitis C and other drugs, leads to defective T cell mediated immunity. This will activate the interleukins, and these interleukins will be circulated in the circulation, and this leads to the changes in the basement membrane. And coming to the, that is for proteinuria. Coming to the edema, why there will be edema? Because as already we noted, the definition is mainly heavy proteinuria or massive proteinuria or nephrotic range proteinuria and hypoalbuminemia. So proteinuria leads to hypoalbuminemia. One more is the hypercholesterolemia. Hypercholesterolemia, why there will be hypercholesterolemia means hypoalbuminemia will leads to increased synthesis of beta lipoproteins in the liver, which leads to hyperlipidemia or hypercholesterolemia. Okay. And why there will be edema? Edema mainly, this is also increased glomerular permeability to albumin, leads to albuminuria. This in turn leads to hypoalbuminemia. Whenever there is decreased albumin in the plasma, leads to decreased oncotic pressure. So whenever there is a oncotic pressure is decreased, movement of water from the intravascular space to the interstitium, from intravascular compartment to interstitial compartment, fluid will passes. From then this leads to intravascular volume will be decreased, that is hypovolemia. So whenever there is hypovolemia, non-osmotic ADH, that is antidiuretic hormone release will be there. Not only that, sympathetic nervous system activity will increase. This in turn leads to increased renin-angiotensin aldosterone system activity. So whenever there is increased renin-angiotensin aldosterone system activity, this leads to renal water and sodium retention. That is called as underfill theory. Why underfill? Because of hypoalbuminemia, decreased oncotic pressure. Decreased oncotic pressure leads to movement of water from intravascular space to the interstitial space, decreased intravascular volume. That's why underfill theory. This is the main pathogenesis in case of edema in most of the conditions like minimal change nephrotic syndrome. So, but sometimes this usually associated with normal normotensive or hypotensive individuals. BP will be normal or lower. But sometimes we will observing more BP readings, that is hypertension in some nephrotic syndrome cases also. Like example, in which conditions hypertension will be there when there is a nephrotic syndrome? Significant lesions like SLE associated conditions and hepatitis B infection associated, there will be hypertension. Why there will be? This is due to overfill theory. Here is a primary renal sodium retention. Here pathogenesis is mainly starts with primary renal sodium retention. So increased blood volume. Here increased blood pressure will be there. This alters the Starling forces at local tissue levels and leads to edema. And this increased blood pressure suppresses the renin-angiotensin system. So this is the overfill theory mainly applied for the significant lesions nephrotic syndrome where there is a hypertension, associated hypertension. That way we can explain the why there is hypertension in the significant lesions in nephrotic syndrome like SLE. If you observe, usually common in girls around 10 years, adolescents and adults, it's more common SLE. Adolescents like 10 to 18 years also it will be common, where usually hypertension is also there. It won't respond to the steroids as minimal change in nephrotic syndrome responds to the steroids. So coming to the main clinical manifestations are mainly due four main symptoms, mainly due to these problems like protein proteinuria and hypoalbuminemia and hyperlipidemia and edema. So how they will manifest? So initially, usually the child mothers will complain that early morning child will be having facial puffiness or periapical edema because around the orbit loose areolar tissue is there. So this leads to more prominent around the eyes only initially whenever there is a minimal fluid leak into the interstitium. So periorbital edema will be there. Then only it progresses to other parts leading to ansarca, that is generalized edema, ascites, pedal edema, and genital edema, and hydrocele, and all those will be the manifestation. So you can it's the usual pitting edema, usually bilateral pitting edema there, and ascites will with prominent veins and will be visible in children with generalized edema. Initially, usually periorbital edema only. Later, it progresses to generalized edema. So, main features: edema, pitting edema, bilateral pedal edema, sacral edema. The child is in lying down position, most often it will be in sacral edema. Like in case of infants with congestive heart also, they will have sacral edema. Periorbital edema, total edema, abdominal, even skin over the abdomen also edematous. You can see marks of the threads or welts over the abdomen because of cutaneous edema. And ascites, bilateral pleural effusion, they will manifest with this thing. And sometimes they may have infections. Usually, secondary infection, they will present with fever. Most common infections in nephrotic syndrome are peritonitis and cellulitis. And peritonitis usually commonly caused by pneumococci organism, encapsulated organisms, mostly because immunoglobulins also excreted in the immunoglobulins also proteins. So those also excreted in the urine. This leads to more prone for infections. Complement and immunoglobulins all are proteins. That's why they are also excreted. This leads to infections. And usually they may have normotensive shock unless it is a significant lesion. So significant lesions, they will have hypertension. So most common closely simulating condition is the clinically condition is the acute glomerulonephritis. So how will you differentiate between the nephrotic syndrome and acute glomerulonephritis clinically? Because both will present with facial puffiness, generalized edema, decreased urine output usually. BP, unless you record, we can't say hypertensive or not. Hematuria also, massive gross hematuria in AGN, that is acute glomerulonephritis, will leads to cola color, but it may be observed in only few conditions, not all conditions. So clinically, usually both conditions will mimic. So how will you differentiate? Depending upon the onset. Insidious onset in case of nephrotic syndrome, for a few days, the child will have periorbital edema, facial puffiness, followed by generalized edema. But acute glomerulonephritis or post-streptococcal glomerulonephritis, acute onset, sudden, until yesterday child was normal, all of sudden child developed edema. And also they may have usually hematuria, gross hematuria, or cola colored urine or smoky colored urine, parents will tell, because that much hematuria will be there. Nephrotic syndrome, especially minimal change in nephrotic syndrome, they won't have hematuria. Only hematuria will be there, that too microscopic hematuria in case of significant lesions in nephrotic syndrome. Then edema follows, not edema first here. Okay, hematuria, oliguria, followed by edema in case of acute glomerulonephritis. Here, after edema, oliguria follows. And BP, if you record, usually most of them will be hypovolemic. And sometimes it's severe, it will lead to shock also, hypovolemic shock. But in case of acute glomerulonephritis, all cases will present with hypertension. If you record the BP, you won't miss the diagnosis of acute glomerulonephritis in a pediatric age group. And usually, sometimes this hypertension leads to hypertensive encephalopathy. They may manifest with seizures and altered symptoms. If not diagnosed and treated AGN, it leads to congestive cardiac pain. In case of nephrotic syndrome, they will have ascites and pleural effusion. And not only this, if you take proper history or if you examine general examination carefully, you can get the history of pyoderma or skin infections in the past 1 or 2 weeks. Or if you examine in general examination also, there will be scars of healed pyoderma or healed scabies marks will be there, because scabies usually secondarily infected with streptococci can leads to acute glomerulonephritis. That is the complications of scabies. So nephrotic syndrome, usually they won't be any skin lesions normally. Okay, all of you got the differences between nephrotic syndrome and acute glomerulonephritis clinically? This is very, very important. Okay, are you able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
This clinically, whenever you get a AGN case, acute glomerulonephritis also, they will ask how will you differentiate between nephrotic and AGN. If you get nephrotic also, they will ask, vice versa. Or if you get a case of generalized edema also, they will ask. What are the other conditions with generalized edema the child may have? These are 2 conditions. What are the others? Sometimes you will have spotters for a practical examination. The child is there with generalized edema, they will show you, or otherwise clinical photograph of a child with generalized edema or UNSERC, they will show. What are the other differential diagnosis? Differential diagnosis for UNSERC.
Hepatic cirrhosis.
Hepatic cirrhosis, are you sure? Plain hepatic cirrhosis won't produce generalized edema until it is end stage, rectorenal syndrome.
Yes, ma'am.
Nelson or Davidson.
Congenital hepatitis. Mixed edema.
Mixed edema won't produce generalized edema. Only lower limbs edema. Face will be normal.
Any congenital hepatitis disease.
Heart failure also presents like this only. Severe anemia, HB of grams or 4 grams with congested heart. Generalized edema. Until you examine the conjunctiva and oral mucosa, other sites where you look for the pallor, then you will know the pallor, and if you examine carefully, auscultate, flow murmurs or hemic murmurs over the precordium will be there, and bone, all the, anything else? Any other
Thyroid abnormalities.
below? What are the other
Thyroid
conditions?
abnormalities.
Thyroid abnormalities, like what do you mean? Hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism? Edema should be there, not pushing out face or puffy face. Facial puffiness means usually periorbital edema, then generalized edema or pedal edema, like that. Is the Kwashiorkor child will look with generalized edema?
Kwashiorkor Sam.
Not severe acute malnutrition or Kwashiorkor with edema. With edema, yes, will be present. So their child will be, in case of Kwashiorkor, dull looking. He won't show any interest towards the others are playing. He won't show interest towards the food also. But in case of nephrotic syndrome, child is very active, playful, and even though he is getting breathlessness due to pleural effusion or ascites, he want to play, he want to eat more food also. He will ask each and everything, but parent will restrict because it may contain salt. They will restrict, no, you should not eat and all those things. But they will cry for food also in case of nephrotic syndrome. That you will differentiate clinically by looking at the child, him or herself. If you look at them, you will see that the child won't show any interest towards the food, or he won't play in case of Kwashiorkor. That is mental apathy will be there. Nephrotic syndrome child will be active, playful. Depending upon the severity of the ascites, they may have breathlessness. Okay, but they take food normally, they will have good appetite also. Next, coming to the atypical features. So typical features, the typical minimal change in nephrotic syndrome, those are atypical, like grass hematuria may be there. Usually acute glomerulonephritis, we will talk about the grass hematuria, but atypical cases of nephrotic syndrome may have grass hematuria. Then we have to think about significant lesions, nephrotic syndrome, like nephrotic syndrome associated with SLE or HSP. They may have hypertension also. They will usually minimal change nephrotic syndrome will respond to the steroids. That's why we call it steroid sensitive nephrotic syndrome. But sometimes they won't respond to the steroid. That is called as steroid resistance. That also indicates we have to look for the underlying cause and significant lesions in nephrotic syndrome. Hypocomplementemia, that is complement levels will be normal in case of nephrotic syndrome, but hypocomplementemia indicates there is some significant lesions, and skin rash and renal failure. Rash may be there in kind of SLE and all those things, connective tissue disorders, and renal failure. Not diagnosed, they may go for renal failure. Coming to the investigations, what are the immunological investigations we will do? As I told you, severe anemia can produce congestive heart failure and mimic the nephrotic syndrome by generalized edema. So HB percentage is a must to rule out anemia, and total WBC count and differential count, because total count will be raised and polymorphonuclear lymphocytosis will be there. So to rule out infections, and urine protein test, dipstick test to detect proteinuria, and can go for the microscopy to detect lipiduria and any pus cells and bacteria, and culture and sensitivity to detect underlying urinary tract infection. Usually nephrotic syndrome will be triggered by some underlying infections like upper respiratory tract infections or urinary tract infections or pneumonias, all those things. So we have to check for the underlying infection also. And biochemical investigations, blood urea, serum creatinine and serum electrolyte to note the renal function. If the renal function is normal or if there is altered, then more probably it's associated with significant lesions. And serum cholesterol level, usually hypercholesterolemia will be there more than 200 or 250 milligrams per deciliter. So this is the test I think all of you remembered when you are in the biochemistry lab. You people used to do taking fresh urine in a test tube and heating at the level of the junction of the urine. Usually we may take up to two-thirds of the test tube or 50% of the test tube. If you heat at this top layer of the urine, it will leads to precipitation. There is a proteins. That is a qualitative method, not quantitative. So turbidometric method, denaturation and precipitation of urinary proteins by acid and also heating. So this is compared to the standards. It detects the proteinuria only. So false positives also sometimes common. If the child, the person received contrast agents for IV contrast for renograms or some other investigations, any contrast agents, high levels of antibiotics if they received also, they may give false positive results for the qualitative techniques. So this is our spot urine test like dipstick methods. Usually this can be done at child labs or sometimes at home also to educate the parents. This is a strip. This is the strip you can observe, I think. Here you can see this is a urine strip. With this strip we will usually dip in the urine. So if depending upon the protein levels in the urine, it will leads to different colors. Like if there is no protein at all, it gives to yellow color. There is a trace, that means 15 to 30 milligrams per deciliter of protein in the urine, this color will be there. And 1 plus means 30 to 100 milligrams per deciliter. 2 plus means this 2 plus indicates 100 to 300 milligrams per deciliter. 3 plus 300 to 1000 milligrams per deciliter. 4 plus means more than 1000 milligrams per deciliter. Protein is there in the urine. So color coding will be there. You will compare this urine stick with the color coding. This is a rough estimation, bedside estimation, to know whether there is a urine protein 1 plus, 2 plus, 3 plus, or 4 plus. Why this main purpose is to follow up whenever the child started on depending on 24-hour urine protein levels, we will start on prednisolone. Then we will see whether child is responding to the treatment or not by this urine dipstick. Very easy, and bedside parents also can do it. So this urine plain microscopy, you see, in case of nephrotic syndrome, before startment, the hyperlipidemia leads to lipiduria. This is a lipid bodies in the urine. So specific investigation, general investigation, specific 24 hours urine protein. How we have to educate the parents also how to collect the 24 hours urine protein. They will be provided with container in which they have to collect the urine from the early morning. Usually first provided urine will be discarded on the day 1. After that, every time whenever child passes the urine, they will collect in the urine container up to the next day morning, including early morning provided urine should be collected. So first past urine will be discarded on the day 1, and this will be continued on the next day morning, including the first past urine. That is 24 hours urine protein. Then that sometimes it will be not possible, especially if the child age is less than 1 year or very young female children. They can't collect 24 hours urine protein. Sometimes they may not able to collect. Then we can go for the spot urine protein creatinine ratio. This almost gives the results equivalent to the 24 hours urine protein, especially young children. So if the spot urine protein creatinine ratio of more than 2 indicates nephrotic range of proteinuria. The 24 hours urine protein, as I told you, the more than 1 gram per square meter per 24 hours or more than 40 milligrams per square meter per hour also indicates nephrotic. 40 milligrams per square meter per 1 hour also indicates nephrotic, or 1 gram per square meter per 24 hours. Or otherwise you can do spot urine protein and urine creatinine and take a ratio which is more than 2 indicates nephrotic syndrome. And serum complement levels, only if there is atypical features like hypertension or microscopic or grass hematuria, then only we will go for the complement levels, not routinely. Or the child is not responding to the steroids, then only we will go for the serum complement levels. And HbS-AG test. This also, whenever you think that significant lesions are there, it's not in a typical nephrotic syndrome, that is minimal change nephrotic syndrome, then we will go for the HbS-AG test to rule out hepatitis B infection. Other specific, for every nephrotic syndrome child, we have to do MANTO test before diagnosing and treatment. Why? Because anybody, why we have to do every nephrotic syndrome, especially first episode, we have to do MANTO test? There is underlying tuberculosis. If you start treatment, usually treatment, what is the drug of choice for nephrotic syndrome? What is the drug we will use? Prednisolone is the drug of choice. Okay. So prednisolone is drug of choice. So if you give prednisolone without ruling out the tuberculosis, underlying pulmonary tuberculosis, that will flare up. So for that purpose, we have to do MANTO test, and if it is negative only, we will go for the prednisolone. And chest X-ray also for that purpose. If there is a history suggestive of contact or history suggestive of respiratory illness, we have to do MANTO test and chest X-ray before starting prednisolone. And renal biopsy only in some conditions. As I told you, atypical features are there. Atypical features like hypertension, not responding to the steroids, or if you are suspecting congenital, if the age of the child is less than 1 year, ideally if the age of the child is less than 3 months, then only we will do the renal biopsy. Not all cases of nephrotic syndrome we will go for renal biopsy. Only specific atypical cases only we will go for this. Okay, any doubts until now?
Ma'am.
So coming to the differentiation, laboratory differentiation, clinical differentiation, I already told about the how to differentiate nephrotic syndrome from acute glomerulonephritis. Laboratory wise, usually in case of nephrotic syndrome, urine protein dipstick test usually 3+ or 4+ will be there. But in case of AGN or acute glomerulonephritis or post-streptococcal nephritis, urine protein will be 1+ to 2+. And coming to the urine lipid bodies will be there in nephrotic syndrome. But in case of AGN, urine RBC, red blood cells will be there, and also RBC cast will be there. And 24 hours urine protein will be more than 1 gram per square meter per day in nephrotic syndrome, but not in case of AGN. And urine protein creatinine ratio also more than 2 in nephrotic. But here, azotemia, blood urea serum creatinine levels will be increased acute glomerulonephritis. And serum albumin will be less than 2.5 grams per deciliter, and serum cholesterol will be more than 200 or 250 milligrams per deciliter in nephrotic syndrome. These are the laboratory differences. But in case of AGN, usually blood urea creatinine will be increased, and sodium potassium levels will be, hyperkalemia will be there, and elevated ASO titers because post-streptococcal will be there. And hypocomplementemia there because antigen and complement and antibody precipitation will be there at the basement membrane in case of acute glomerulonephritis. So these are the laboratory differences. If you can remember, remember. But clinical differences are more important than laboratory differences. So diagnosis, main triad of nephrotic syndrome is, as I told you, proteinuria. It's not 2 grams. This is 1 gram. I corrected, but it came. Okay. Proteinuria, urine protein more than 1 gram per square meter per day. hypoalbuminemia less than 2.5 grams per deciliter, and hypercholesterolemia of more than 250 milligrams per deciliter. Here it is 1 gram, not 2 grams. So this is the tried with or without edema. That's a nephrotic syndrome we will diagnose. So once you diagnose, how will you start treatment? So you have to confirm your diagnosis by 24 hours urine protein or urine protein creatinine ratio. Next, typical versus atypical. Is it typical minimal change in nephrotic syndrome or atypical with the associated features like hypertension and macroscopic or grass hematuria? That is atypical features. So we have to rule out underlying infections like urinary tract infection by doing urine culture and sensitivity, and rule out tuberculosis by doing Mantoux test and chest X-ray. Rule out other complications and educate the parents and child. That's very, very important in treatment. So disease process we have to educate to the parents. If the child is older enough, to the child also we have to inform and discuss with him or with her, because unless they know the importance of taking the daily, because they have to take the drugs daily. So coming to the treatment, general and specific. General supportive care like giving protein diet, rich diet, and salt restricted. No, it's not like no salt. Only less salt we have to advise, and otherwise child may not take the food. Palatability will be decreased. So restricted salt intake and edema management and complication management and vaccination in the general and specific corticosteroids. So coming to the supportive therapy, diet usually will give 1.5 to 2 grams per kg of protein should be there in the diet, and fat should not be more than 30% of the calories, and salt restriction if edema is there. Edema corticosteroids usually have diuretic action also, but it takes around 1 week to 10 days to produce diuresis by steroids. So if there is severe ascites causing distress, then only we will use diuretics. This water immersion therapy we won't use. Previously, golden days they used to use, but diuretics like loop diuretics, furosemide, or if you there is want any potassium sparing, you can use spironolactone along with furosemide. But you should be very cautious while giving diuretics, because as in the pathogenesis we discussed, it can lead to hypovolemia. Intravascular hypovolemia will be there. So if you give further IV diuretics, will further deteriorate the hypovolemia. That's why we should be used cautiously unless there is a need, like child is having severe distress because of massive ascites, then only we will use diuretics. And very high, low levels of albumin, severe hypoalbuminemia, then we can give salt-free albumin infusion slowly, because albumin infusion also further increases the edema and can lead to congestive heart failure. So it should be cautiously we have to use diuretics and albumin inhibition depending upon the condition of the child. And vaccination. So there should not be any live vaccines during the course of the disease. When you are using the steroids daily continuous therapy, you should not use vaccination unless child comes to the remission. After remission, we can use live attenuated vaccines, but we can during the disease course, during the steroids, you can use pneumococcal and H influenza vaccine. These are killed vaccines, so you should not give live vaccines during the active phase and during the steroids continuous daily regime of the steroids. This is from OPGAI only. You can read later from the OPGAI. Just listen to me. First episode. Then this is the question asked previously also. If you check your old papers, 10 for 10 marks they asked for the first. How do you name is the first episode of nephrotic syndrome? So first episode of nephrotic syndrome: absence of hypertension, absence of hematuria, absence of azotemia. That means it's a minimal change in nephrotic syndrome, steroid sensitive nephrotic syndrome. So prednisone 2 mg per kg daily, or otherwise 60 mg per square meter per day. If you can remember that. Otherwise, remember simply 2 mg per kg daily for 6 weeks, followed by 1.5 mg per kg on alternate days for 6 weeks. And infrequent relapses. That means what is frequent relapse? There are 4 or more relapses in any 12 months, or 2 or more in any 6 months. We call as frequent relapses. So less than that is an infrequent relapse. Okay? Adhamain andarki vintunara? Are you able to hear me? Nara. Frequent relapses means, because this will be asked in the orals. Frequent relapses means 4 or more episodes in any 12 months, or 2 or more in any 6 months. We call as frequent relapses. Infrequent means less than that. So infrequent relapses. Usually nephrotic syndrome runs in, it may, more chances that it may relapse. That we have to educate to the parent and the child. So infrequent prednisolone we will give 2 mg per kg daily until remission. Usually it takes 10 to 14 days. Then 1.5 mg per kg on alternate day for 4 weeks. But frequent relapses, that means it indicates steroid dependency. Whenever steroid is there, child will be okay. Once you taper or stop, then they will have features. So for that, we have to go for alternate day prednisolone, maintenance remission, assess the steroid threshold. If the threshold is less than 0.5 to 0.7 milligram per kg, on alternate day, if the child is okay, then we can go for the alternate prednisolone for 9 to 18 months. But threshold is more, so this may lead to steroid toxicity. Then we have to go for a steroid sparing drugs like levamisole, cyclophosphamide, tacrolimus, mycophenolate, and cyclosporine. So sometimes for 2 marks or 4 marks, they may ask what are the steroid sparing drugs for nephrotic syndrome. These are the drugs. And steroid resistant won't respond to the steroids at all. If you give daily 2 mg per kg for 4 weeks, also they are not responding, then it is called as steroid resistant. Then we have to go for the pediatric nephrologist consultation and renal biopsy, and we have to go for the other drugs. So first episode in detail, if you just for summary say 60 mg per square meter or 2 mg per kg for 24 hours in 2 divided doses we can give for 6 weeks. Next 40 mg per square meter or 1.5 mg per kg alternate day, not daily. Once a daily dose, morning dose you can give for 6 weeks. This is the normal course for first episode. Some people will taper, some people will stop abruptly. Relapse, if there is a relapse, then prednisolone we will give 60 mg per square meter per day or 2 mg per kg per day for until remission. Usually takes 10 to 14 days. Then 1.5 mg per kg alternate day for 4 weeks. So complications, what are the complications? This is also commonly asked question for 4 marks. What are the complications of nephrotic syndrome? Because of massive edema, they may have breathlessness and respiratory distress, malnutrition. Because edema masks the malnutrition, protein will be lost. So this child will be having underlying malnutrition, and there will be infections like peritonitis, cellulitis, pneumonia, urinary tract infection because loss of immunoglobulins and complements in the urine, because those are also proteins. Protein will be lost in the urine. This leads to more, they're more prone for infections. Thromboembolism, because this antithrombins, protein, those are also proteins, protein C, protein S. So all those also excreted in the urine. So they're more prone for thrombosis. That's why you should not go for deep vein puncturing in like femoral vein puncture and all those cases. In case of nephrotic syndrome child, this may leads to thromboembolic manifestations. Hypotension, hypovolemia leads to hypotension and shock. And they may have hypothyroidism, iron deficiency anemia because of lack of proteins only, vitamin D deficiency and growth failure because proteins are lost. Growth failure may be due to the disease itself or may be due to the steroid treatment, because here we will use steroids, which leads to premature close of the epiphysis. Steroid toxicity will lead to Cushing-like issues and osteopenia, fractures, more prone for infections. Steroid toxicity itself also leads to thrombosis. So these are the complications we can tell due to disease itself and due to therapy. So peritonitis usually we miss. Usually the child may present with pain abdomen only. There won't be any fever and other features because this nephrotic syndrome child is an immunocompromised child. So we have to go for the peritoneal assessment. Usually it leads gives more than 250 cells total counts and more than 50% will be neutrophils. And gram stain and culture will give the clue. Usually commonest organism is the pneumococcus. That's why we'll give pneumococcal vaccine to all children with nephrotic syndrome. And you can hear the pictures. You can see there is asymmetry of lower limbs due to deep vein thrombosis here. Deep vein thrombosis leading to asymmetry, painful and swelling. And this deep vein thrombosis can lead to any vein can be thrombosed. If it is cerebral veins, leads to monoparesis, paraparesis, or hemiplegia, whatever maybe vein only. He is a monoplegia. That's why child is not able to move this upper limb, but here she is lifting the upper limb. So capillary filling time usually we will see over the chest wall, but you can see in severe condition anywhere it will be observed. And short stature and Cushing-like features because of repeated uses of steroids leads to short premature closure of epiphysis and stature, and you can see the pushing gut features with chubby cheeks and deposited fat deposit over the abdomen. Sometimes we can observe striae also. Treatment of complications. What is the time now? Haven't time on the
10 minutes on, ma'am. Inka.
Okay. Treatment of complications. Usually complications are infections. No, we have to give third generation cephalosporins and a stress dose of steroids whenever there is underlying infection. And hypovolemia we can treat with fluids and salt-free albumin infusion. And thrombosis anticoagulants like low molecular weight heparin also can be used. So parental counseling is very, very important. The child is old, we have to educate the child also. Because as I told you, it's not a single time. Once you treat, it won't disappear as such. It may recur after few months or few years also. So that you have to tell at the starting of the treatment only. Otherwise, they will think that the doctor not treated properly. They will go for the other native medicines and all those green leafy extracts and Ayurvedic and other alternative medicine that may lead to further damage to the kidneys. And if not treated, may leads to end stage renal failure, and the child may need renal transplantation. That's why we have to tell the parents and the child that's a usually simple condition. Minimal change. Most of the condition, 80% is the minimal change. Usually respond to the treatment, but they may get some few relapses once in a while, like after few months or few years. Then usually outcome will be good. But in case of significant lesions, nephrotic syndrome, like secondary nephrotic syndrome, due to SLE or HSP, they may need, they may sometimes resistant to the steroid. Then we have to use the other alternative drugs. Treated properly, outcome will be good, but still significant lesions nephrotic syndrome may go for end-stage renal disease. So we have most of the conditions, it is a minimal change. We have to give the counseling. Otherwise, they will be afraid whenever the child gets edema. Parents may be afraid of that. So we have to counsel them. A simple drug prednisolone will cure the child if they take in the proper doses for proper duration. That is also important. So we have to educate the parent how to do the urine dipstick or boiling test and daily urine examination in the morning time initially. Then once the child is in remission, then frequency will be decreased to once or twice a week. And diary they have to maintain. They will do the urine test at the home, and they will maintain whether it's 1 plus or 2 plus like that. So if it's more than 3 consecutive days, if it's more than 2 plus, they have to come to the doctor. And so normal activity and school attendance, child can go and attend the classes once the child is in remission. When the child is active or the child is in daily regime of prednisolone, they should not go to the school because they may catch the infections and condition may be deteriorated. So appropriate immunization we have to advise. Live vaccine should not be given during the daily course of steroids. Once the child is in remission of the steroids, then they can go for the live vaccine, especially varicella. We have to give the chickenpox vaccine, because if they catch the chickenpox disease during the episode, the nephrotic syndrome, or when the child is in daily steroid therapy, they are almost like immunocompromised. It can lead to dissemination. So we have to give the varicella vaccine, and the child is in complete remission. But pneumococcal and H influenza B can be given during the course also. Other vaccine coverage is not given. You have to give the proper vaccination to the child, because whenever disease process is there, there will be almost immunocompromised child. Coming to the follow-up, what is it? These are the definitions. Sometimes you should know while treating the child in the orals, they may ask, what is relapse? We are talking about relapse. Relapse means urine albumin more than 2 plus in the early morning samples of 3 consecutive days. 3 consecutive days, consecutively you have to do. Not today if you do, tomorrow and day after tomorrow also. Like that, 3 consecutive, not in between. Then it is called as relapse. Remission means 3 consecutive days, urine albumin nil or traces, we call as remission. So child is in remission. Then if it is relapse means 3 consecutive days positive, more than 2 plus positive, and nil or traces 3 consecutive days is a remission. Next, what is steroid sensitive nephrotic syndrome? In remission after stoppage of steroid sensitive, usually they will be in remission whenever you stop the 6 weeks of daily regime and alternate day 6 weeks. That is child is most probably steroid sensitive nephrotic syndrome. Indicates usually minimal change nephrotic syndrome. Steroid dependent usually relapse during the tapering of steroids or alternate day therapy, or within 4 to 14 days of stopping the steroids. That is, they are dependent on the steroids. Whenever you give steroids, they will be in remission. that is dependency. The more frequent relapses can lead to steroid toxicity. Then we will go for the steroid sparing drugs like levamisole, cyclophosphamide, and all those. Now, steroid resistant nephrotic syndrome, no remission even after daily 2 mg per kg per day for 4 weeks or higher dose also. That is steroid resistant. We have to think about the renal biopsy, and accordingly we will go for the treatment. So these are the drugs for steroid dependent and resistant patients like levamisole, cyclophosphamide, chlorambucil, cyclosporin, and tacrolimus. Whenever you are going to start cyclosporin, renal biopsy is a must before starting. Conclusion: it's the commonest glomerular disease in children. He has a chronic clinical course with recurrent episodes of edema. Response to steroid therapy has a good prognosis. And close hold of the child and monitoring of side effects for the immunosuppressants is important for this condition. And coming to the exam questions, you may get questions like this. Describe the clinical features and management of a child with first episode of nephrotic syndrome. Already in previous papers, this question was there for 10 marks. And define steroid dependence or steroid resistance. They may ask for 2 marks or 4 marks. And enumerate the complications of nephrotic syndrome for 2 marks. And otherwise, they will also ask for the steroid toxicity, notes on infections in nephrotic syndrome, urine protein estimation, differences between nephritis and nephrotic syndrome. One more thing is there is also differences between nephritis and nephrotic. Acute glomerular nephritis usually school-going children ఉంటుంది. Nephrotic syndrome preschool, most common in preschool children. Some examiners will stress on that point. Age-wise means you have to tell like that. Acute glomerular nephritis in school-going children, because streptococcal infections are like rheumatic heart disease also more common in 5 to 15 years. Like that, aging also more common in 5 to 15 years. Okay, thank you. Any doubts? Anybody is having any doubts regarding nephrotic syndrome? What is remission, relapse? What is, any doubts? There are frequent relapses, infrequent relapses. You can ask me. Any doubts? Any doubts are there?
No, ma'am.
Somebody's, any doubts are there?
No, ma'am.
No doubts, huh? Because it's very, very important topic for your theory and practicals also. Clinical discussion also, it's very important, but I think it's also there in medicine also, but there usually significant lesions are more common. Pediatric case group, minimal change in nephrotic syndrome or steroid sensitive is more common, but adults, most of the cases will be steroid dependent or steroid resistant cases in nephrotic syndrome. That's why they will go for end stage renal failure and hemodialysis, peritoneal dialysis, and kidney transplantation. All those will be treatment of choice in those conditions. Okay. Okay, then I will leave. Any doubts?
No, ma'am.
Okay. I will leave now. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Bye.